when you start getting comments that disagree with you and they're more on the fringe, it just means you're getting a lot of traction. So that's good. So I wanted to do a follow-up really and talk about the importance of being one issue voters, having a one issue that trumps the others in politics. I saw an example of what I believe, and I differ on Jason Black. Jason Black, I'm not sure where he's at on this because he kind of went in circles, but I believe that Alexandria Ocasio Cortez saying that she is a descendant of slaves and also saying that she's in favor of reparations, angling for reparations to include Jim Crow as well.
For example, I'm Latina, and Latino Americans have a really interesting identity because, especially for me as a Puerto Rican woman, my identity is the descendant of many different identities. I am the descendant of African slaves. I am a descendant of indigenous peoples. I'm a descendant of Spanish colonizers. I am a descendant of all sorts of folks.
And also saying that she's in favor of reparations, angling for reparations to include Jim Crow as well, that is something that Jason Black should smile about because it means he's winning. She looked at the people who were criticizing ADOS, the Joy Reids, Angela Rise, now Symone Sanders, and she looked at the comments, I bet. She dip tested. And one thing about, this is why I think she could be president. Everybody dip tests. Everybody tests the pulse. The difference is that the candidates that are more in touch, they understand to what degree social media reflects the population at large. They also understand to what degree they can and can't socially engineer a different opinion. And she made her analysis and she said, I'm descendant of slaves. I'm with these motherfuckers. They're winning. So that is a good thing, especially because she is as genuine as any politician. She's a spender. She's more of a real liberal. She'll in some format run on policies that redistribute wealth. And if she does that, then hell. And she's in favor of reparations. And she's so in favor of it, she's like, I'm gonna latch onto this movement. and to be real, what is a Puerto Rican but it's American territory. It's been an American territory longer than a lot of the states. And most Puerto Ricans, even the palest ones, are like 5% black and African. And that's what I'm saying. Wouldn't it make sense to do it based on genetics and not people having to look up their lineage all the way back to when? I mean, the human rights violations, they haven't stopped. So when? How far do you go back? I'm saying maybe at least go back to the civil rights movement, to the ending of Jim Crow. Okay, so somebody just can't show up, change their name from Onfukache to Willie Dean and say, hey, you'll have the change name DOS from Nigeria. But to me, that's the simplest way to do it and still prevent stuff like that. But there's people, they don't know their lineage. They can't trace it. They don't know their daddy, and don't know their mama before their mama. So they don't really trace the lineage that strong, but they are ADOS, aren't they? So what do you got to do something. Because that does beg the question, who would get reparations? Obama's daddy or Obama's mother? Obama's daddy is not No relation to American descendants of slaves. His mother, though, from what I've heard, that might have been just something to hype up Obama, make him a person of the people, but supposedly that's not uncommon. Europeans in America, people that are of majority European descent, it's not uncommon for them to have African ancestry in some respects, and I should say recent African ancestry, because all of them got African ancestry. You don't have to go back that far. I mentioned that in the population genetic video. The most successful, I won't say colonizers, the most successful people to go to Europe and become the population that it is today left more recently. They weren't, 40,000, 50,000 years out of Africa. They were more like 15. So they all have relatively recent African ancestry. So when I say recent, I'm talking more recent than that, 15,000 years. I'm talking, 200 years. So it's very realistic that Obama's mother would be more ADOS than his father. And that's something that we'd have to look into. And I think it's just simple to have it go by genetics, and that applies for Puerto Ricans. It applies for Virgin Islanders. Anybody who's a U.S. territory. And if that's what it takes, because that's the angle I see, and that maybe I'm wrong on that. I see Alexandria Ocasio Cortez saying, those are the winners, these are the losers when it comes to the argument. And really that's what it is, because if you listen to the follow-up with Joy Reid, Symone Sanders, Angela Rye, their follow-ups, they're just demonstrating that they're wrong. And then the only people who are rocking with it are the sycophants that you have on social media. I'll talk about that when Young Pharaoh, that dude, his fans are the worst. They'll go along with anything. And then the beauty of a one issue is it's simple. Because what else is important? And it also shows that you're about real power. Because if you're not about power, one way you can tell when somebody's not about power is they want every little thing to be done for them. Where if it's like, hey, cut me, $3 trillion, some land, blah, 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 I'll handle the rest. They know that they can take that and become bigger than whatever frame is set there for them. If it was a, micronized handout, here's this, here's this, here's this, it's only going to be so much, but you can blow up 3 trillion. You can become the most powerful people on the planet. And that's the fear that a lot of people are going to have. That's one of the reasons why I wanted something that was large enough to do something. Because I talked about that number in the last video, but also something that you can go to the American people with and they won't be like, the fuck are you talking about? 16 trillion. We never spend that money on anything. I want something that is at least in scope with what America spends money on. Besides, like I said, in the simulation in the Democracy 3, which Democracy 3 is actually better than using a real budget because it's a little bit more expanded. It's larger than the typical American budget, so it represents what we're more likely to see in 20 years, 15 years, if reparations are passed as soon as possible. And I think 15 years is probably as soon as you would see it go down. So at that scale, that period of, what's the word for it? Inflation. That it would equate to $8 billion a month. Like I did the numbers just for 3 trillion. And even with a little more inflation, you could probably make it 3.5 trillion. That's the strength right there. and using that Democracy 3. Plus, it's a decent game. It's cheap. You can get it on Steam for very little. But the idea that it doesn't show up as its own item on a pie chart. You look at that video. I got a video where I go over that. It's called 3 Trillion in Reparations, Black Power's Meta Preview, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't, like, it's like, hey, you can make the argument, if you're fighting for this bill, that they're not even wanting a piece of the pie or a slice of the pie. They want a piece of a slice, because that's what it essentially is. On a pie chart, it doesn't even have its own slice. Also, I want to give props to Jay and Dela, because he did that little calculation on the $100 billion that Marianne Williamson is arguing for. And I think he said it was like $1,500 or $2,500. No. Right now, I would suggest, being one issue, give her your vote right now. If they had elections now, give her your vote with an asterisk. Like, make reparations hot because she's running on it, and that would send a message to the people who aren't. But be sure to include a letter to her saying that $100 billion ain't about shit. $1,500, $2,500, and that ain't nothing. As a matter of fact, I said to somebody in the comments of the last video, and I didn't really spell this out, but I'll say it now. I kind of said it from a different angle. If it were to just be $100 billion in reparations, I would want it to go to the church. And I know when you hear that, that's loaded. Because the church, in my opinion, is so broken that it would be crazy to give it any more money. It's a waste of money right now. But it would be the church with conditions. They'd have to meet certain conditions to the point where they're able to create profit, and maybe even other 501c3s, but just be able to create businesses that industrialize a science. Because that's what really is how Africans got down when, and I'm saying this is the diaspora, when we controlled the superpower nations, that's how they operated. You didn't have all them temples of do nothing and jack shit. They, for whatever deity they had a sign associated with that deity. There is a deity for the bathroom in Egypt. And who do you think handled the sewage treatment? That's how society worked. And if you can demonstrate that you are at that point where you can start plumbing businesses, you can start any type of factory research, law. I mean, every science in the book. Egypt had 20,000 gods. I need 2,000 gods. That's kind of a roundup estimate. And I need 2,000 sciences. And if it's a big church, if you're capable of buying a goddamn airplane, you're capable of building a damn airplane. So the bigger ones would have to have a higher standard. And once they reach that standard, they would get the $100 billion. I'd rather do that than just pass out checks. So when I talk about reparations, I am in favor of checks, but it's got to be progressive in the sense that they start off small so people kind of get used to having some money. And then maybe the last one is $25,000. So now, okay, $25,000, you may be able to, if you've already done well with what you had before, if you were already working in addition to what you're getting, you can maybe put down on a home. And now you completely change the wealth dynamics in the U.S. Or maybe instead of a home, maybe you can start another business. Maybe you started one before with what you were getting before. And that's something that you can do with a circulation of a few trillion. And plus, if you're also tapping money to churches, if you're fixing your broken religion, you're going to be more likely to hire within, because now you have people who are developed in certain schools of science as expertise. You take away those two, there's about two more. You handle the media, you fix your families, white supremacy is done, permanent, gone for good. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I need to do about 5 more simulations, but Everything I've seen so far with all the logic trees I planted, those are the 4 things you do to take out white supremacy. And white folks, if you're listening, you'd be better off for it because the shit is hierarchical. Chances are, if you're not in the top 3%, you would benefit pretty much the same way. It would be the exact same thing. And the top 3% is going to die wealthy anyway. The interesting thing about Marianne Wilson is I first heard of that $100 billion from Robert Perkins, and he was the first one to straight up say that it wasn't nothing. So all the dusty whatever Robert Perkins is being called, at least he knows money. And because he was on that real quick, and he was real about it. He was real. Like he wasn't like some people. They heard $100 billion, man. They not gonna give that to us. I'm like, oh man, they was getting kind of samboic over a goddamn $100 billion. Some ain't shit money. Ain't it funny though how Cory Booker? And this is one area, really most areas, I agree with Jason Black. I'm pretty much cool in step with Jason Black. But I think he's a little pessimistic on Alexandria Ocasio Cortez. I think she sees the winning horse and she's betting on it. She's betting on new black media instead of old black media, and Jason Black isn't catching the compliment. Instead, he's like wondering, he's catching the Freudian slip because she said, I can use this. I mean, I can talk about the story of my ancestors. Yeah, so you can use it. Okay, but I'll make that deal. Okay, let's go buy genetics. Puerto Ricans are Americans too. How about $3 trillion in wealth redistribution? Let's do that. So I'll make that deal. Matter of fact, I expected to make that deal. But anyhow, the thing I was saying where I agree 100 with Jason Black, matter of fact, that I did not see this, but it's so obvious, is Cory Booker slipped up and said with this whole baby bond shit, baby bonds, if it was just redistributed, if it was just focused on African Americans, you could damn near give African Americans $1 million baby bond. So the money is there. The money is there, and that's what I've been saying. The money is definitely there. It's just that, and it didn't hit me because that's exactly what he was saying. Like, this dude's an idiot. Cory Booker so far showed that he's dull, but worse than that, he's a bitch. And I'm sick of these bitch candidates. And I say the same thing about Bernie Sanders. When he says that reparations is divisive and it couldn't pass Congress, well, you can't argue for reparations in America for when reparations is passed Congress for other people. How are you going to say it's not going to pass Congress when Western Europe got reparations after we went to war against Germany, and that included Germany? How are you going to say it's not going to pass Congress when Japanese and Native Americans and white people and capitalism and animals have all received reparations? That don't make any sense unless you're a bitch. And I'm sick of Bernie Sanders acting like a bitch when it comes to black people. But then you get he's like, no, I'm not a bitch. I'm going to show you a bitch. What the fuck, Symone Sanders? Come on, Symone. Come on. Come on. Nobody else can go around saying some bullshit like that. You could have just said men. That's why you show up like a bitch, because you singled out black men. And then you talk about it's just about some misogyny. Nigga wasn't even saying some goddamn shit about misogyny. I'm talking about Luther Campbell. He wasn't saying anything that you could project as being misogynistic. So then you back off of it. Nobody, and notice, none of these people can give any type of real apologies. Everything is loaded. Like the tongue remains forked. So I would say, hey, relax on Alexandria Ocasio Cortez until you see that she's speaking out of the forked tongue. Right now, all she's saying is she can utilize her African ancestry to get reparations. That beats these people that are just straight up lying, like Symone Sanders. That was a complete lie. Her apology was a lie. She basically said she was talking about some misogyny when this dude was talking about Kamala's issues. Now if he's now she's saying this was about him saying pop that coochie. So she's going back to his music. She's going back to his porno days. Okay. That ain't no kind of apology. That is bitch shit, and I expect bitch shit from Bernie Sanders. Bitch recognizes bitch, and I think game does also recognize game. At least that is what I'm seeing so far, that Alexandria Ocasio Cortez, because she is more in touch, and she reveals people who are not in touch, like Republicans. When Republicans throw dirt on her, like when that video where she was dancing, I don't know if Republicans were really that big on that, but a few of them were. They actually thought that we were all of a sudden living in the 40s where that was some dirty ass dancing. I mean, not even the 50s. Would that have been, that was nothing. And it made her look human, fun. And like, oh, she's a fan of Breakfast Club. I like the Breakfast Club. For the dudes that like the dandruff, Ali Sheedy was it. And that's it to me. Stick with one issue and be stubborn about it and just see what happens. Because you have some options right now. You have Marianne Williamson. And that's why I would say cast your vote with her, but keep an asterisk there. Make reparations hot. Anybody that's offering jack shit, Cory Booker, Kamala, embrace them with jack shit. So I'm not saying don't vote too. I'm saying vote. Vote reparations. One candidate is talking reparations. That is the candidate to vote for. But keep a letter out there and make sure that message that $100 billion ain't shit spreads. Because when you endorse it, it's going to sound like you're endorsing all of it. Don't. Matter of fact, I would say write in Marianne Williamson for president if you're voting in the primaries, and I advise you to do it, and then put in parentheses that $100 billion ain't shit. Okay? Might do a video on that too, but I think this covered it. I mean, Jay and Della, he ran the numbers on that. Even if I'm off, because I don't remember if he said 1,500 or 2,500. That ain't shit. Neither one is shit. So it's the same thing. Like I said, 1,500, 2,500. If it was that much, I would rather go to the church under conditions. Like, fix your shit, and then you get the money, okay? Fix your shit, because all of our churches and mosques and our ancestral African religious temples, they're all broken for roughly the same reason. They don't function how they did when we were running countries, nations. When we were on the forefront of science, they don't function like they did then. You go in there and they're beating tambourines and look, and like I said many times, I know people are going to love the gods. I'm not tripping on God love. Love you some gods. Go ahead. Love you some gods. I don't care. I love them all. I pray to all of the gods at different times, but most of the time I don't pray too often. I'm not a spell beggar. I'm a spell caster. But when I do pray, I pray to all of them that I know of, at least.